BRAINY presents Why So Many Intelligent People Are Quitting the World. There's a subtle shift happening that doesn't get talked about enough. More and more intelligent people are offering less of themselves to the world. They are still showing up to work, paying bills, maintaining relationships, and generally doing what's required of them. But internally, something has changed. Their interest and emotional investment in things have dropped significantly. This shift rarely arises from a single breaking point. It develops slowly after years of paying attention and realizing that much of what demands attention no longer delivers anything meaningful in return. Let's take a closer look at why so many intelligent folks are pulling back lately. They see repetition where others see novelty. A lot of what appears as new isn't actually new at all. Language changes, framing evolves, but the underlying mechanics remain largely the same. Accordingly, intelligent people tend to notice structure before story. Instead of getting caught up in presentation, they pay attention to patterns. They notice when ideas are recycled, when conflicts recur in slightly altered forms, and when moments presented as breakthroughs ultimately circle back to familiar outcomes. What looks like forward movement often feels like rearrangement. The emotional beats, the arguments, the cycles, it's all too familiar. After a while, that recognition simply dulls their interest. They notice when conversations stop being about truth. At some point, many discussions stop aiming for understanding and start aiming for alignment. It can be sensed when people no longer respond to ideas, but to the social temperature in the room. Statements get softened and edges disappear. The goal slowly shifts toward avoiding discomfort, backlash, or misinterpretation. Once that happens, the conversation begins to feel more like role-playing. And when dialogue turns into careful self-management, many intelligent people simply stop wanting to participate. They see incentives before intentions. Critical thinkers pay close attention to incentives. They understand that behavior follows reward structures more reliably than stated values. They notice who gets promoted, whose voices are amplified, which behaviors lead to status, and which ones quietly disappear. Over time, these patterns reveal far more than mission statements ever could. When incentives reward visibility over accuracy, emotion over thought, and certainty over nuance, intelligent people adjust their expectations. This doesn't mean they're cynical about everything. They just don't take things at face value. They lose interest when curiosity is replaced by certainty. Curiosity is central to intelligent thinking. It requires room to explore ideas without immediately defending them. But many modern environments no longer allow that. In fact, people are expected to arrive with fully formed opinions. Intelligent people feel this friction quickly, as their natural way of thinking doesn't fit spaces that value certainty over exploration. When questioning is treated as hesitation and revision is seen as weakness, participation loses its intellectual appeal. Instead of adapting by becoming louder or more rigid, many simply withdraw. They feel bored by emotional manipulation. Emotions such as fear, outrage, and urgency are effective at capturing attention, which is why they're used frequently. But for those who notice that pattern, the effect changes. The emotional volume goes up, but the substance doesn't. Everything is presented as critical, yet very little is actually clarified. Intelligent people pick up on that imbalance rather quickly. They also resent being pushed emotionally without being given anything concrete to think about. They don't mind strong feelings when those feelings lead somewhere. What drains them is being pulled into a heightened state that never produces understanding. They notice how often people talk without thinking. Perhaps one of the most alienating realizations is how much conversation happens before thought has time to form. Opinions appear instantly, yet very little appears to be processed. People speak to fill space, to maintain presence, or to confirm an identity. The act of talking becomes the point. For intelligent people, however, engagement relies on the sense that thought is happening in real time. When that disappears, interest disappears too. Silence begins to feel more intelligent than contribution, and disengagement becomes a way to avoid being pulled into constant, low-effort noise. They see how easily crowds become irrational. Understanding group behavior often leads to tempered expectations. Intelligent minds recognize how easily emotion spreads, how quickly nuance collapses, and how unreliable collective judgment can become, particularly under pressure. People stop weighing ideas independently and instead respond to the prevailing atmosphere. This awareness definitely evokes caution. When collective judgment starts drifting faster than reality itself, stepping back becomes a way to stay oriented. They're sensitive to superficial complexity. One of the fastest ways to lose an intelligent mind's interest is to dress something shallow up as sophisticated. Corporate jargon, performative activism, endless productivity frameworks, and buzzword-heavy explanations all create the appearance of depth without having any. Intelligent people are especially sensitive to this because they know what real complexity feels like. It involves uncertainty, trade-offs, and discomfort. Being immersed in superficial complexity, on the other hand, requires a kind of mental compliance. You're expected to nod and repeat while acting impressed. When complexity exists primarily to obscure rather than clarify, it's mentally draining, and disengagement becomes the more honest response. They recognize that life demands constant self-fragmentation. Society expects people to split themselves into pieces, one version for work, another for public expression, another for family dynamics, another for social belonging, another for whatever role is being evaluated at the moment. None of these fragments is entirely false, but holding them all at once creates strain. Each context pulls for a slightly different posture, tone, or priority. Intelligent people tend to feel this fragmentation more acutely. They can sense when they're adjusting themselves to fit expectations, rather than acting from a stable center. Pulling back whenever appropriate reduces the need to align across incompatible demands. They've outgrown the need to be understood by everyone. Understanding feels important, and clarity seems like something that should resolve disagreement if you just try hard enough. Intelligent individuals often notice how rarely explanation actually leads to understanding, simply because many people aren't listening to learn. They're listening to confirm, defend, or position themselves. As that realization sets in, the urge to clarify everything fades. Misunderstandings become less threatening, and silence becomes a deliberate choice. There's no longer a need to translate every thought into something universally acceptable. They've accepted that awareness comes with grief. There is a cost to seeing things clearly. As perception sharpens, certain beliefs lose their credibility. Ideas about fairness correcting itself, progress naturally improving outcomes, or people acting rationally when it matters most feel less and less dependable. It's a slow recognition. Expectations soften, and hope becomes more conditional. For intelligent people, that recognition carries grief. Not the kind that demands expression, and not the kind that looks like despair. It's a subdued awareness that some assumptions can't be held honestly anymore. Once that line is crossed, there's no way to unsee it. In sum, what appears to be disengagement is often the visible result of internal recalibration. Intelligent people are not completely rejecting the world. They are responding to it thoughtfully by adjusting how much of themselves they offer, where they invest attention, and ultimately what they choose to engage with. Their withdrawal emerges from pattern recognition, critical evaluation, and a strong desire to preserve cognitive and emotional integrity. They still care deeply. They just refuse to expend energy on systems that reward superficiality over substance and understanding. Thanks for being here and watching to the end. If this felt eerily familiar, it's probably because you've been paying attention for a long time. Be sure to add your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new post.